One of the things that I've keyed in on, especially because it's a struggle for me, because I felt like I wasn't good enough, I kept trying and I kept trying to do this. And you notice I keep saying I. It was all on me. And my friends, when you try to have a one-sided relationship with anybody, it doesn't work. If you carry the load in any relationship, it's not a true relationship. But you know what? God wants to carry the load for us. He wants us to lean on Him. He wants to be there for us. And so we have to spend time talking to Him, but also letting God talk. Yes, prayer and Bible study are highly important, but my friends, often that's just about what I'm doing and checking off the mark. I'll read a verse really fast, then I'll say the rote prayer, the same prayer that I said yesterday and the day before, and I don't actually give God time to speak. In 1 Samuel, we come to an interesting picture. Young Samuel is sleeping in the temple. He's sleeping at church because his mom had dedicated him to God, so he got to go live very close with God. And one night he's sleeping in the temple and he hears his name being called, and so he jumps up and he runs to Eli and he says, "Eli, you called me." And Eli's like, "No, I didn't, kid. Please go back to sleep. I'm trying to get some sleep." And so Samuel goes and lays down, and I don't know how long it was, but soon he hears his name being called again. So he jumps up and he runs to Eli and he says, "Eli, you called me. What can I do for you?" And Eli's like, "I did not call you, kid. Go sleep." So Samuel goes and lays back down, and the voice calls again. And so he jumps up and he's like, "Eli, you did call me. What do you want?" And Eli finally wises up, and he's like, "No, no, no. It wasn't me who called you." And here's what he tells Samuel. He realizes it was God calling. So in 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 9, he said to Samuel, "Go and lie down again, and if someone calls again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back to bed, and the Lord came as before and said, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel replied, "Speak, your servant is listening." My friends, do we do that? In this relationship with God, how much does God get to talk? If you had a one-sided relationship with your best friend or your husband or your boyfriend or your mom or your kids or anybody else, and the only thing that ever happens is when you saw them, you talked 100% of the time, what kind of relationship would you actually have? It wouldn't be a relationship. It would be a lecture. You have no ability to have a relationship unless there's back and forth dialogue. But God has said, "You're beholden to me. You owe me everything. And what I want from you is I want you to walk with me." We can't walk with God unless we're letting God speak into our lives. And if we're the only ones talking, then we can't actually hear God talk. We haven't made space for Him. And so when we hear those voices saying you're not good enough and you're never going to make it and you're not going to measure up, those aren't God's voices. They're our voices. They're the voices of ourselves in our head. There's an opera singer. All of a sudden he realized he was no longer able to sing and hit certain notes that were well within his range. So he went to a whole bunch of doctors, and he finally came to Dr. Alfred Tomatis. And Alfred Tomatis didn't think it was actually a throat problem. He thought it was a hearing problem. So he did a number of testing, and he discovered that opera singers sing so loud that it's louder than a jet engine at over a meter away, which means that in their head, their voice is so loud that this poor opera singer had caused himself selective deafness. And what Dr. Tomatis realized is you cannot sing, you cannot speak, you cannot say what you cannot hear. And so this poor opera singer, because he had caused himself to go deaf by his own voice in his head, he could no longer reproduce those notes that he couldn't hear anymore. As we're trying to be beholden to God, as we're trying to give Him everything, too many of us struggle with spiritual deafness. Too many of us have let our voices become the only voice in our relationship with God. And because of that, we're not actually hearing the grace and the love and the joy and what God actually wants to say to us. What God has gotten through to me, even though sometimes I still struggle with not feeling good enough, now I know that that's not God. And so when that happens, I'll actually go and I'll be quiet. And I say, "God, you need to give me your voice. You need to tell me." And what I hear is that I loved you. I died for you. I want a relationship with you. And I can make you more than you could ever be on your own. My friends, because we are beholden to God, because we owe Him everything, let's give Him our hearts. Let's walk with Him. Let's live life with Him. But in order to do that, yes, we need to do the Bible reading and the prayer because that's important, but we need to listen to Him. We need to hear His voice. We need to give Him opportunity to speak into our lives because it's when we listen to Him that He changes us. The Bible tells us that it's God who gives us the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. But if we're not listening to Him, then we don't get either one of those things. My challenge for you today is for you to spend some time with God. Read a Bible passage for a few minutes, or journal for a minute, or pray for a minute. Do what you want to do. But then I just want you to sit in quiet. And I want you to say, "Speak, Lord." Let Him impress you. And the way that God impresses me sometimes is He'll put a song in my heart. He'll put a Bible passage in my head, and I'll go look it up. You know what God told me a while ago? And it brought me to tears. He said, "You're enough, Jen, because I'm enough." I promise you, if you sit and you allow God to speak into you, if you walk with God, that's the only thing He wants. He wants that relationship, and that relationship changes us from the inside out. We begin to do the good things that He wants us to do. We begin to love mercy. We begin to do all of those things because He's coming through us. My friends, if you will spend time listening to God, it will change you.